The Methods of Deception. Episode 4. The Sudden Shock. Last time, we saw that faking danger has one fatal weakness. It only works on a predator that has already learned or been born knowing what to fear. But this next method needs no such thing. It works on a hunter that has never learned a single lesson in its life because it does not argue with the mind at all. It reaches straight past thought and grabs a lever older than thought itself. Picture a small brown moth resting on a tree, so dull you would never look twice. You reach toward it, and in an instant it snaps its wings open, and two enormous eyes are staring straight at you, huge and round and unblinking. And before you have thought anything at all, you have flinched. You have pulled your hand back. That flinch was not a decision. It was faster than a decision, and that flinch is the entire point. This is the fourth method of deception, and what sets it apart from everything before it is that it does not try to convince the predator of anything. It hijacks a reflex. Every animal with a nervous system carries a hardwired, involuntary startle response, a protective jerk that fires faster than conscious thought can happen, long before the brain has worked out what it is even reacting to. You have it. I have it. A bird has it. And the crucial thing, the thing that makes this method so different from faking danger, is that this reflex requires no learning whatsoever. The predator does not need to know what the flashing thing is, or to have ever seen one before, or to fear it. It just needs to flinch. And a predator that recoils for even half a second has handed its prey a head start. Biologists have a name for this: a diematic display. It is deception aimed not at the mind, but at the wiring underneath the mind. And we know for certain that it works without any learning because of one beautiful experiment. The peacock butterfly, when its wings are shut, is a perfect deadleaf mimic. But disturb it, and it does something dramatic. It repeatedly snaps its wings wide open, flashing 4 huge, staring eyespots, and at the very same moment it hisses, rasping its wings together to make a sound. Scientists put these butterflies in front of blue tits, hungry little birds, and painted over the eyespots on some of them. The result was staggering. Of the butterflies whose eyespots were left intact, only 1 out of 34 was killed. But of the butterflies whose eyespots had been painted out, 13 out of 20 were eaten. The eyespots alone were the difference between life and death. And here is the part that matters most for us. The peacock butterfly is perfectly edible. It has no toxin, no defense, nothing to back up the threat. The birds fled from a pure, empty bluff. And when researchers later showed the display to young birds that had never encountered it before, they were startled just the same. No experience, no learning, no idea what they were even looking at. They flinched anyway. Now the eyespot is the signature move of this method, and nature has invented it again and again. The eyed hawk moth keeps a pair of vivid blue and black eyes hidden under its drab front wings, flashing them only when something attacks. The emperor moth wears its eyes openly. The owl butterfly carries one single enormous eye on each wing, so lifelike it seems to look right through you. And a certain caterpillar, when threatened, pulls in its legs and swells up the front of its body until it becomes a small snake, complete with 2 glaring fake eyes and a slow, menacing sway. There are even giant silk moths, whose wingtips carry the unmistakable pattern of a little snake's head. So why eyes, specifically? Part of it is surely that a big pair of forward-facing eyes is the universal signature of a predator that is looking right at you, and nothing seizes an animal's attention like the sudden sense of being watched by something large and close. But experiments suggest that is not the whole story. When researchers rubbed the eyespots off butterflies, birds were less frightened, yes, but a sudden burst of bold, symmetrical, high-contrast color still startled them, even when it did not look like eyes at all. So the shock lives partly in the raw event itself, the abrupt appearance of a big, vivid, symmetrical pattern. Where a heartbeat ago, there was nothing. The fake eyes just make a good thing better. And the method goes far beyond wings. Consider a small frog from South America that turns its own backside into a monster. When it is threatened, this frog gulps in air until it swells up, then lowers its head and hoists its rear end into the air, and there, on its rump, sit two large dark glands that stare out exactly like a huge pair of eyes belonging to a much bigger, angrier animal. And it is not entirely bluffing, because those same glands can ooze a foul, toxic secretion. It presents a giant fake face that can actually bite back. Snakes do a version too. A cobra's spread hood is itself one of these displays, a sudden doubling of apparent size, and some cobras carry a pattern of fake eyes on the back of the hood, so that a threat sneaking up from behind is met by an enormous, staring face. The sheer variety is wonderful. There is a katydid in Australia that looks like nothing more than a dull, dead scrap of leaf, right up until the instant something touches it. And then it rears up and throws open its body to reveal a shocking hidden display of red and blue and black banded skin it had kept completely concealed the whole time, oozing a bad-tasting fluid for good measure. The Australian frilled lizard erupts a huge umbrella of skin around its head, gapes its mouth wide, raises its body and waves its tail, swelling from a modest lizard into something alarming between 1 second and the next. A blue-tongued skink, cornered, suddenly unfurls a startlingly vivid blue tongue and hisses. Praying mantises rear up, throw open brightly colored inner wings and raise their spiked forelegs, transforming from a twig into a large, alien, threatening shape. And there is an insect, the lanternfly, sometimes called the peanut head bug, whose hollow, enlarged head is molded into the shape of a small reptile's, complete with what appear to be eyes and teeth, so that a bird lunging in gets the sudden, jarring impression of a snake's face where an easy meal should have been. This method also works in pure sound. Remember, the peacock butterfly does not just flash, it hisses. There is a hawk moth, the death's head, that squeaks loudly, forcing air out in a sharp cry when it is disturbed. And a sudden loud noise, a hiss, a buzz, a snap, is itself a jolt to the nervous system. Tellingly, many of these displays are held back until the predator is right on top of the animal, deployed only at the last instant when the surprise is at its absolute maximum and there is no time to think, only to recoil. Even the masters of skin, the cuttlefish, do this. A cuttlefish threatened in the open will suddenly flatten its body, darken its outline into a bold black border, spread its arms wide, and flash a pair of large false eyespots, freezing an attacker in place. And then there is a gorgeous hybrid of this method, and the very first one, called flash and vanish. Certain moths and grasshoppers have drab, camouflaged bodies, but hindwings that blaze with brilliant color, red, orange, yellow. When they are flushed, they burst into flight in a shock of that color, and the predator locks on, forming a mental image of a bright, vivid, flying thing. Then the animal lands, snaps its wings shut, and instantly becomes invisible again, a plain brown scrap of nothing. The predator, still hunting for the bright flying thing, arrives at the spot and finds it simply does not exist anymore. The startle and the disappearance working as one. What all of these creatures share is a kind of ruthless economy. Nearly every one of them is completely harmless. The moth is just a moth. The mantis cannot really hurt a bird. They are not backing up their performance with any genuine threat at all. They are simply reaching directly into the predator's nervous system and pressing the single button marked freeze. And with that one press, They buy the half-second it takes to be gone. There is a deeper idea buried in all of this, and it reaches back to something we saw last time. A startle display usually begins as a complete bluff, an empty threat backed by nothing at all. But if the animal making it happens to also be genuinely distasteful or toxic, like that frog with its poison-filled glands, then over evolutionary time, the bluff can slowly harden into something honest. The sudden flash of color stops being a lie and becomes a truthful warning. I really am dangerous, and now you have been told. Startle, in other words, may be one of the doorways through which honest warnings first entered the world. The empty threat and the real one are separated by a surprisingly thin line, and evolution walks back and forth across it. So that is the sudden shock. In some ways, it is the cheapest deception in all of nature, because it convinces the target of nothing whatsoever. It makes no argument, tells no story, holds no pose for hours, backs up no threat. It just borrows, for one crucial instant, a reflex the predator cannot switch off. But here is the thing about a sudden shock. It only works once, and only if the predator actually flinches. Surprise, by its very nature, cannot be repeated. So what happens when the bluff fails? When the eyes flash and the hunter does not blink, or flinches and then comes right back, hungrier and unimpressed? At that final, desperate moment, some animals do the most counterintuitive thing imaginable. Having just tried to look as alive, as huge, as dangerous as they possibly could, they flip completely to the opposite extreme. They stop moving. They go limp. They fall silent. They make themselves look not fierce, but lifeless. Not a screaming burst of eyes and color and noise, but a cold, still, convincing corpse. Because it turns out that in a world absolutely full of hunters, when every other trick has failed, one strange and final option remains: to simply, believably die. That is next time when we play Dead.